focus back to the aviation story that we are covering before the break, and Captain Sanjay Karve, aviation expert and analyst, is now joining us. Mr. Karve, thank you so much for taking your time out and joining us here on ET Now. Tell us, how do you assess the entire situation and the preliminary report findings? What are your key takeaways from this particular report?
First, at the outset, it is very nice to see that India has decided to go public with the preliminary report, unlike previous instances. Like Ashesha, if you would remember the previous accident, we don't know what was the preliminary report. But here in this preliminary report, there are more questions to be answered. We have got some answers, but there are more questions. They have, in the entire CVR, from the time the aircraft has started rolling till the time the aircraft has crashed, why is it that the AIB has picked up only two sentences, which says, have you switched off the fuel cutoff lever? And the other pilot says, no, I have not. Why is it so? Are we trying to deflect the blame from the manufacturer, the OEM, the engine, and put the blame squarely on the pilots, or leave that element of doubt? Is that so? Either they should not have put this segment, or they should have come with a complete segment. This fuel control switch was always a debatable thing, which Boeing itself has acknowledged, FAA has acknowledged. They put it as an advisory, very obvious commercial considerations. If they had made it mandatory in 2018, you can imagine 1787 and 2000 plus 737 would have got grounded. And I don't think Boeing was in a position to supply so many spare parts. A part of the system has worked. When the engines shut off, the FEDEC, that is what we call as a digital engine control, that is fully automatic digital engine control. It did relight the engine. The number one engine was relit. It was coming up to the RPM. The number two engine was also lit up, but it did not have sufficient height to get to full RPM. The exhaust gas temperatures of both the engines have started rising. The theory that the pilots may have switched off is something which I just do not subscribe to. Which pilot during a takeoff roll would like to shut down a fuel supply to an engine? I don't think any pilot would like to do that. Even if you have a fire on one of the engines, the recommended practice is go to a safe height, then take actions. This is a very critical regime, from unsticking to reaching a safe height. Similarly, even on the final approach, once you have settled down on an approach, once you're on the localizer or the glide slope, if you have a fire on one engine, the recommended practice is leave it there. Fly the aircraft, come on ground, and then look at it. Similarly, during takeoff also, if there is an engine fire on one engine, recommended practices, leave it there, fly the aircraft. There is no time at that critical stage to start looking inside and figure out what is happening. What we need to figure out is, how did the switches go from run to off and off to run again? Was it a mechanical failure? Was it an electrical glitch? Because they cannot be easily moved from one place to another. It has to be a deliberate attempt. The switch has to be pulled out of its position, moved forward, and then again placed in the slot. So it cannot happen inadvertently. So something has happened in the cockpit which we don't know. We only know the selective truth. That means out of a minute cockpit voice recording, we know only about 10 seconds of what has happened, not the entire 1 minute, which definitely we need to know as to what was that entire 1 minute. Also, someone needs to ask FAA and Boeing that such a critical thing, why was it an advisory? I would not blame Air India, because if it's an advisory thing, it is left to the airline. It will be interesting to find out how many other airlines have done these checks in the world after being shown as advisory. Because the moment you say a check has to be carried out, it involves money. I know it involves lives also. But when you say advisory, you may. English is a very interesting language. You may means the leeway is given to you and it says, well, I have washed my hands off. I think it's okay if you do it or even if you don't do it. But if you feel nice, do it. It should have been mandatory. Even now in the AIB report, the AIB has not commented anything whether should a check be carried out on all aircrafts.
Right.
They were within their rights. to give this recommendation. It is up to FAA or Boeing to decide whether to do it or not.
Right.
They could have definitely insisted that Air India go through all its 787 and check the fuel control switches, which has not
Right.
been done.
Understand. We understand that point, but Mr. Karve, one more question. We had some other experts who joined us on the broadcast, and one of them was suggesting that there are also CCTV cameras in the cockpit of Dreamliners. If you can elaborate on this, and perhaps the footage of that CCTV camera could help in the investigation going forward, which will be the outcome of the final report. What will your thoughts be on this?
Absolutely. Brings me back to the first point which I said. Why only a part or a segment of what happened in the cockpit has been put in public domain? Why is AIB reluctant in putting the entire thing in public domain? Does it hurt someone's interest? Why is it so? It's a probe. We have lost 240 lives, out of which close to 200 were Indian citizens. The families need to know as to what happened in those 60 seconds within the cockpit. Just releasing one statement that, did you switch off? And the reply is, no, I did not, does not make sense to me. You have so much of data available as to what has happened in the cockpit, and you decide to go ahead and release only a selective part of it. That makes it a little, I don't know how to put it in words, very uncomfortable.
Understood. We get that point. Mr. Karve, thank you so much for taking your time out and joining us here on this edition of News Now and helping us decode what the preliminary report really means. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
If you like this video, then like, share and subscribe to ET Now.